on this, the March 12th, 2026 edition of What's Going On with Shipping. Shipping is a fire. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to this episode. So I am a bit distraught, I'm not going to lie, with the report I'm about to give you. Things are not good. I mean, I have not been this discouraged towards shipping in a long time. This video you see here was released of a unmanned surface vessel attack on two tankers at anchor off of Kuwait and Iraq. One of the tankers there is American-owned. The other one that is nested up alongside is Greek-owned. What you're seeing here is probably naphtha igniting and burning, and you're seeing from these vessels heading away probably the ships that were involved in executing the attack and bringing the drone or whatever type craft or mine was used to put up against the side of the vessel and initiate the attack. So a bad day in the Persian Gulf. This comes on top of the previous day where we had an attack on a Thai bulker that has led to 3 crew members going missing. All bad, all terrible. And then what we're seeing right now is literally panic. I don't know what to say here in terms of the administration scrambling, trying to come up with some sort of policy to deal with the absolute cork in the bottle that has now happened with shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. I get to hear from people on ships and get to hear from ship owners. And what they want is some sort of direction from the United States. What is happening and when can they get their ships moving? Where's going to be security? What are we going to do it? It has been absolutely a discouraging 24 hours here at What's Going On with Shipping, but we're going to try to overcome that and talk about what you need to know about shipping. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. So this is a story from Reuters. Explosive sea drones emerge as a new threat to tankers in the Gulf attacks. All right, first off, these are not new threats. I mean, we have seen these used by the Ukrainians in the Black Sea. We've seen them used by the Houthi in the Red Sea. There should be no surprise that they're using these level of attacks here. Naval drones have been used in at least 2 attacks on oil tankers in the Gulf since war erupted between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. The emergence of the use of explosive-laden unmanned surface vessels, which Ukraine had used with great effect in the war with Russia, comes as Iran threatens to block oil shipments from transiting the key Strait of Hormuz. We won't know that because there's been no oil movement through the Strait of Hormuz because everybody has locked in place. Because first we had the insurance issue, which has been resolved largely. The second now is a security issue, which is on the onus of the United States to demonstrate that the area is clear. Again, I am not in favor of the U.S. being the policeman of the world, but the U.S. instigated the attack and they bear some responsibility here to ensure that shipping is able to flow. I've used this analogy and I'll use it one more time here. If you look at the world ocean shipping system, it's like the circulatory system of the human body. We have pinched off the femoral artery of one of our legs, and you have a finite amount of time before you've got to get blood flowing again, or else you're going to cause permanent damage, or you may kill the system, but more than likely what you're going to wind up doing is hacking it off, and now you're crippled. That's the situation we find ourselves in. This story goes on. The first sea-based drone attack was on March 1st when a crude oil tanker, the MKD Viam, was hit about 44 miles off Oman. That resulted in the death of a crew member. And again, we have known that this style of attack is out there. And again, these should be able to be guarded against fairly easily. Helicopters, small boats, patrols should be able to spot these things and be able to eliminate them. But right now, the U.S. military is focused on offensive operations and not defensive operations because, in truth, they don't have enough forces in place to do both. So if you want to understand about uncrewed explosive boats, the guy you go to is H.I. Sutton over at Covert Shore, over at Covert Shores. I'll have the link to this. I'm going to try to get H.I. to come on the channel and talk about this. He is the master of knowing this. He's got a great webpage here that gives you all the details on this. Next, we have the latest from the Joint Maritime Information Center under the UK Maritime Trade Operations and the U.S. Central Command. Again, I'm just going to highlight some of the key areas. Number one, we are still at a critical level in this area. Here are the two vessels in question. Safe Sea Vinishu, which was struck by an unknown projectile during a ship-to-ship transfer. That ship actually came out from Iraq, anchored, and then Veyros came alongside. I'm not sure which ship was transferring into who, but both of them were hit. That was about 5 nautical miles south of Al Basra. And then Source Blessing was at anchor, struck by an unknown projectile. Here's our latest data on Strait of Hormuz passages. Again, on average, about 138 ships typically pass. Well, we were down to 1 on March 11th after peaking at 7 on 10 March, but we are getting nothing through the strait. That what we are seeing coming through is some Iranian vessels, which I can't understand why. Again, if you're targeting Iran, you haven't targeted those vessels. I talked about seizing those vessels as a strategy for the United States. Again, Iran is targeting, destroying, killing merchant mariners out in the Persian Gulf right now. You can do a takedown scenario of Iranian ships, and that would give at least some sort of mechanism to interdict their flow of oil coming out, and more importantly, potentially some leverage for hopefully some negotiation between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. So we're seeing the attacks, again, more attacks on the upper region of the Persian Gulf right now. So that is those attacks that we just had here off of Iraq and Kuwait. We're still seeing attacks in and around the Strait of Hormuz, and the jamming is just getting to ridiculous levels here, particularly just inside and outside the Strait of Hormuz. So a new feature on the JITMIC report is a consolidated list of confirmed maritime security incidents going back to 1 March. This actually takes up 3 pages now of incidents that have taken place. Again, I'll have a link to the JITMIC advisories. It's under the UK MTO. Feel free to download it, take a look at it. I wait for this report to come out before I put my video together for you for the day. So I went to G-Captain Lloyd's list for the latest stories, just to give you a quick recap for today. Iran's shadow fleet disrupted by Middle East war. At least 6 empty shadow fleet tankers are inbound to the Persian Gulf. That's what they call the Middle East Gulf. Have diverted. 2 tankers are seeking new employment, sailing in directions of transshipment hubs inside the Persian Gulf. Loadings continue. At least 16 tankers, 3.4 million deadweight tons, likely positioned for Iran loading. So Iran is loading oil. This is the thing that, again, I think is really important. They don't want to close the strait. This is why that issue about mining is so important here. I don't think Iran wants to close the strait because they need to keep moving their oil. And obviously, it's of supreme importance to Iran to move that oil. We have this story from Greg Miller. Middle East, very large crude carrier indexes are still near peak, but Atlantic rates are sinking. So the Baltic Exchange Middle East Gulf indexes are down only 5 to 7%, while the Atlantic Basin are down 35 to 39%. VLCC owners' stocks reached multi-decade or all-time high on March 2nd. Since then, Frontline is down 15%. Oceanus 13%, DHD 9%, and International Seaways 8%. There is more downside than upside risk to VLCC rates, and listed companies are likely to stick to low-risk loading ports. So a little bit of insight there. We talked to Jay Mintzmeyer last week about stocks. Here's a good follow-on by Greg Miller. And then this story by Rob Wilmington, up to 140 container ships at risk in the Gulf as indiscriminate attacks spread. The escalating conflict in the Persian Gulf has resulted in attacks on 3 container ships in recent days. Lloyd's List intelligent data shows 56 containers from the top 10 global carriers currently stuck in the region, with analysts estimating the total number of trapped vessels across all operators close to 140 ships. Then we have these stories from G-Captain, 2 interesting different national perspectives. This one talks about how India sources say Iran to allow India-flagged tankers through Hormuz as the first tanker arrives. Obviously, India getting oil from the Strait of Hormuz is absolutely essential. It's a conduit for 40% of India's crude oil imports, so allowing Indian tankers in is going to be key. But then you have this story from Norway. Norway bars its ships from Hormuz as attack on merchant vessels escalate. Now, the Norwegian Maritime Authority is trying to prevent any attacks upon its ships, but meanwhile, at the same time, we have European Union vessels escorting vessels through the Bab el-Mandab. Cheers. There hasn't been any attacks by the Houthis against shipping, but we know a French squadron led by the carrier Charles de Gaulle is en route to the region. I want to deal with three stories now that really encapsulate how I think the US is fumbling their handling of global shipping. Listen, when the US initiated its strikes, everybody in the shipping industry realized what was going to happen. They knew. I'm not a genius. I'm not an expert. I'm not a genius. I just know a lot of people. I read a lot. I'm pretty well informed on everything. I'm not the expert on everything and I don't know everything. But I could have told you that if you launch an attack at Iran and you are maintain that level of attack and come out and say it's going to be 4 weeks, shipping's going to lock down. I mean, there was not enough insurance in place to allow this to happen. But more importantly, there should have been a mechanism in place to pull in the ship operators, the insurance firms, to assure them, listen, this is what we're going to do to ensure safety, to keep the flow of goods moving. And did the whole video up above here that we talked about that it's not just oil, it's fertilizer, it's helium, and there's a whole range of commodities that come out. But these three stories indicate to me that, man, the administration does not know how to handle global shipping. And let me be clear, there is no administration that I have seen in the past 30 years that I've been involved in shipping that knows how to deal with shipping. They really don't. But this is an example here of how it's kind of falling apart. First, this story from Bloomberg, U.S. Hormuz escorts may start by the end of the month. This is according to Energy Secretary Chris Wright. Now, Secretary Wright posted something yesterday that the U.S. was escorting a tanker through the Strait of Hormuz, and then he yanked that. Now he's saying it may be the end of the month before we do this. Okay, the U.S. has initiated this operation without sufficient forces in place to do both offensive and defensive operations. What do I mean? They have enough forces to initiate the offensive. They are thinking sea power, strike from the sea. They've got naval forces to accomplish this. They have air forces to complement it. What they don't have is enough forces to go into the Gulf and provide escorts, both on surface and in the air. That is a flaw. That is a fundamental flaw because I guess nobody thought of that. I don't know. Or they didn't think it was enough of an issue to devote resources to do that. To me, that is an error. It's an error that should not have happened. It's an unforced error on the part of the United States. And again, don't ask me this. I'm a YouTube guy. Hi, YouTube here. I teach college. Don't come ask me. You have a maritime administrator, newly appointed, Steve Carmel, Captain Steve Carmel. Dude is a master mariner. He was a VP for a major shipping firm, president for another shipping firm, well-versed in shipping. Go talk to him. Or go over to the Federal Maritime Commission. You just appointed a new commissioner, Laura DeBella, who she knows shipping. She's got an entire staff there that knows international shipping. Literally, 2 people. They're there in D.C. Call them. Bring them into your office and talk to them. And if not them, I will give you a list of people involved in shipping, corporate, shipping guys, shipping women, you name it. There's a list of them I can give you. But the next one here kind of demonstrates another issue. U.S. to release 172 million strategic petroleum reserve barrels as new attacks drive oil higher. So it's releasing 172 million out of a record 400 million coordinated stock draw by the International Energy Agency and its member nations. So this is not just the United States, but 400 million barrels coming out of stocks to meet the shortfall that's coming out of the Persian Gulf region. Now, okay, hang on a second. Let's be clear. As I talked to you about before, oil is not coming out of the Persian Gulf and heading right into a refinery. There is a coordinated element there. There are stockpiles, both afloat and ashore. It goes through. So what we're doing right now is draining down those stockpiles. And the influx of oil into the system is good. Don't get me wrong. People are going to take advantage of this. But what we really need to do is reopen the Persian Gulf. We cannot keep the Persian Gulf shut and close off 20 million barrels per day for a month. That's 600 million barrels you're talking about. You're releasing 400 million barrels. As I mentioned to you before, there's about another 100 million barrels that's afloat off Singapore and Malaysia. There's probably, it's probably about 1 billion barrels of oil afloat at any given time around in the world. Plus you have shoreside stocks and everything. This is a short-term issue. But if you're talking about not even starting convoy operations until the end of the month, well, then we have another problem. Then we have this story by Richard Mead over at Lloyd's List. Naval escorts would cap tanker transits at under 10% of normal volume. So, despite public statements from the US and European leaders, no escort system has been launched, and political, logistical, and security hurdles continue to stall any deployment. Again, I'm not sure what's being done. We listened to General Kane's statement 2 days ago. It sounds like nothing has really been done to get this going. Any protection scheme for Hormuz transit is unlikely to begin until additional U.S. Navy destroyers arrive or sail to the region. Convoy system would initially be focused on outbound transits to relieve the Middle East exports, though how the U.S. and or countries would prioritize transits is unclear. Iran's asymmetric threat, mines, drones, fast attack craft, remain the key risk, with even minimal mine-laying capability of halting all traffic, complicating any reopening of the strait. I think Richard aptly summarizes that. Plus, if you do a convoy operation, you are not going to escort 135 ships out in one time. You're going to bring out some high priority vessels. You're going to get down to a trickle. As he says, maybe 10% of the volume is going to come out under escort. Now, maybe you won't need to escort some of them, Russian, Indian, who knows? Maybe the Iranians don't attack. But no matter what, you got to start this now. And it should have been planned for the day the attack happened. There should have been planned, hey, starting Monday, here's what we're going to initiate for convoy operations. At the very least, United States, get the 5 U.S. ships that are in the Persian Gulf stuck out. You have 5 ships that are stuck in there. You realize that, right? Crews are on there. They're exposed to danger. You have told them through a maritime advisory, avoid the area if possible. They can't. They're there. And then you've told them to stay 30 nautical miles away from any warship. That's, again, you are sending mixed messages out. And then the last one is this story, which I knew was coming. It was only a matter of time. When you create consternation in shipping, someone is going to go to the Jones Act bat signal light and set it off. And here you go. U.S. considers easing Jones Act to tame spiraling fuel prices. The Trump administration plans to waive a century-old maritime law that requires American ships to be used to transport goods between U.S. ports as it seeks to blunt surging oil and gasoline prices. The 30-day exemption, which is still being developed, is set to apply broadly to vessels moving oil, gasoline, diesel, liquefied natural gas, and fertilizer among U.S. ports. That would enable generally cheaper foreign tankers to move these goods, including Gulf Coast oil, to refineries on the U.S. East Coast and fuel from the region to more populous areas. According to White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, quote, in the interest of national defense, the White House is considering waiving the Jones Act for a limited period of time to ensure vital energy products and agricultural necessities are flowing freely to U.S. ports. This action has not been finalized. All right. First off, the persons who's going to be screaming about this most are the oil and fertilizer companies who see an opportunity to make I'm going to use a word here and I apologize, a shitload of money. Because they see this as a golden opportunity. They look for cracks to get into the U.S. industry at every moment. You know, I have come out and talked about the Jones Act a lot. I'm not going to talk about it in this video. I'll do a whole separate video on it probably tomorrow that talks about this. But if you're going to do this, seriously, bring in the pro and the anti group. Bring in those who advocate for it. Bring in those who oppose it. Bring in the operators. Bring in the shipping operators, bring in Crowley Maritime, bring in Liberty, bring in those groups that provide the shipping. Because I'll tell you right now, what people mostly don't know is that Jones Act tankers are actually performing below the standard in terms of rates compared to international ships right now. Charter rates went through the roof for shipping. And one of the things that the Jones Act provides is dedicated service. Now, do we need some sort of Jones Act reform? 100%. Yes, agree. 100%. Do you need it in the midst of a crisis like this? This seems a little bit like smelling blood in the water to me. But bring in those groups. Hey, and then bring in those who want the Jones Act repealed. Bring in the major oil firms. See what they say. Because to be clear, they will scream Jones Act reform because they smell money. If I can run a tanker from Texas to Florida a few times, that's much more profitable for me than to run from Texas all the way through the Panama Canal to Asia and back again on a single voyage when I can run multiple voyages at a much higher rate. Understand the economics of this. I'm not saying we should not waive the Jones Act. I'm not saying we should waive the Jones Act. I'm saying before you do this, Talk to people who know what the F they're talking about. And again, don't listen to me. There are experts out there. You have a maritime administrator, you have a Federal Maritime Commission, you have advocates who say don't repeal this, you have advocates who say repeal this, you have shipping companies that are involved in this. Plenty of people to talk to get an informed decision. Please don't do this because Secretary Wright screwed up something and posted something saying, hey, we're escorting tankers through. And now he's throwing spaghetti at the wall to try to figure out a way to get oil and gas prices down. Because listen, this may get you a penny or two cheaper at the pump. What is causing diesel to go up $1.40 a gallon isn't this. It is what is happening in the Persian Gulf right now. That is the root cause for the problem. And unless you address it either by getting the war stopped and ocean traffic flowing or establishing some sort of security to get ships flowing, this is pennies on the dollar fix that you're trying to fix. You are plugging, one hole in the Titanic that is going down. You need to look at the larger problem, not this. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit the super thanks button down below or go over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. So our next episode, Sal, signing off.